Okay, great. So first of all, thank you to everybody who is joining us via Zoom, who's been very patient. And while we are getting, um, of course, there we go. Well, we are getting up to speed here and getting everybody on through the virtual components. So I appreciate all of your patience. So my name is Jennifer Summers. I am the Program Development Specialist with the Wisconsin Center for Wildlife at UW-Stevens Point. And you are here for the spring seminar series that is titled The Art of Waterbird and Wetland Management. This is a series that is focused all on the intersection between art and waterfowl management. We do have some emphasis on the duck stamp, but we do also have some emphasis on decoy carving. So our speaker today is going to be talking a bit about the intersection between the art of decoy carving and wildlife science. These are the other speakers that are coming up in this series. So next week we have another decoy carver. We have Pat Gregory. What? It's not sure. It's not your face. Whoops. Okay. So sorry about that. Let's try that again. Thank you for your patience, everybody, once again. There we go. How's that? You see it now? Yeah. Okay, great. Um, so again, so next week we have Pat Gregory coming, who is another decoy carver, and he is a master carver. So he's going to be talking a little bit more about the technique and the art itself. So, and again, it's next week, same time, same place in this room. It'll also be on YouTube, and that one, the live stream will work, I promise. But he will be here live in person. I'd like to take a moment to thank everybody who helped to put this seminar series together. First of all, I'd like to thank the folks in the College of Natural Resources. Being Wisconsin Center for Wildlife, we are part of the College of Natural Resources, and they helped us with promotions and always help us with putting it together and using some resources of theirs. So thank you very much to them. The Wisconsin Center for Wildlife is an extension organization in part, so we like to thank them for their help as well. And then finally, Ben Senninger, our waterfowl specialist here on campus, and Marie Perkins, wildlife biologist here on campus, helped me to coordinate this series and to plan it and to contact speakers. So I'd really like to thank them for their assistance. And finally, we always go through this important acknowledgement that the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point exists upon Ho-Chunk land inhabited by the original indigenous people of this area, including the Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and the many other nations and groups that predate colonial borders. We acknowledge that with the colonialization, Native American people have been dispossessed of their lands and irreparably changed by the actions of individuals and institutions. We acknowledge our responsibility to understand and to respond to those actions. In partnership with the Native American Center, we commit to working together to honor the past, be intentional in the present, and to build our future with truth. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Ben Settinger, our waterfowl professor, and he is going to introduce our speaker.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks, Jennifer, and thanks a lot, Chris, for being here today. So, like Jennifer said, my name is Ben Settinger. I'm a professor in the wildlife department, and I'm the Kennedy Brony Chair of Waterfowl and Wetland Conservation. And it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Chris Nicolai today. Chris is a biologist with Delta Waterfowl. He's based out of Bismarck, North Dakota, and I've known Chris for a really long time. He was my graduate advisor at the University of Nevada, Reno, and I've just been really fortunate to know Chris for a long time, even going back before graduate school. Chris has a passion for waterfowl that is just totally unparalleled. And, I think he's going to talk to us a little bit about some of the really cool science that he's doing. He's working on waterfowl projects all over North America. And in addition to that, he's an avid hunter, photographer, and a decoy carver. And that's really going to be the focus of his work today. I just thought I'd show you real quick this wood duck here that Chris carved for me. You'll notice on the bottom there his initial CAN. And so, yeah, the title of his talk today is Bird Decoys from the View of a Biologist. And thanks again, Chris, for being here today. And I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. See my screen?
Not
Nope.
yet.
One more button.
There we go.
That look good?
Looks good.
Okay. Well, I'll get started and I'll try to pay attention to time as well. So can people just see the talk or do you see me as well?
We can see you as well.
Okay, I'll be aware of that. Okay, so we'll get started on here. Like Ben and I lived in Nevada for a long time, so I like putting up we'll visit this a couple times in here, but the oldest decoys, waterfowl decoys, were actually found in the Lovelock Caves in central Nevada. And yeah, you can see them on the water here, and they're actually canvasbacks, which is pretty cool. There's a lot of data showing that canvasbacks were extremely abundant pre-settlement times. Okay, I'm going to get started on the next slide. And there we go. Okay, and I know you guys will be talking with Pat Gregory in the next one, so I'll try to stay back a little bit. But boy, even if we tried, I bet you him and I could talk about completely different topics. So, but for decoys, it's like why does anyone want to play with a bunch of duck dolls? I guess, but they've been really important for a long time. In hunting, it's not necessarily just with guns. You got to keep in mind shooting guns at waterfowl probably has only been around for 250 years. We just didn't have accurate shotguns before that. But, like those indigenous decoys shown before, there's a lot of evidence they're using bows and arrows to get them. So actively harvesting birds, it's probably been around a long time. Bolos, archery, all kinds of devices to actually actively harvest birds has probably been around a lot longer than our guns have. And then, they're also considered a lot of art. You'll get some decoys that'll sit on a shelf that has never been used before. And I use them for a lot of other things too, for awards, or really popular with folks is putting your hunting dog's ashes inside of them. So I'll cover a few things here. I'm going to have a ton of pictures, gobs of pictures. I tried to just infiltrate this with photos for folks. But the lower left is actually my personal canvasback rig that I carved all those birds between my ages of 14 and 24, and I'm 51 right now. So I like hunting with those when I can. And this top right picture is actually pretty cool. You can see this is a private collection in Puget Sound, Washington. And you can see those 3 wood duck decoys up above the decoy I'm holding. And at the time, that back decoy was the highest priced auction decoy on earth. At the time, it was $695,000 it went for. So it's pretty cool to be able to see that. And then, just holding an emperor goose decoy that I donated at that event. And then go through a little bit here about me. Just as a biologist, let people know what I did, things like that. So first, I got started in carving. Just one, I was interested in art, and two, I'd go to Fleet Farm or any of the stores back in the day. But Fleet Farm was the main one, I guess, for growing up in Minnesota, and I just didn't like those plastic decoys. They'd have one body style that was painted as 4 or 5 different species, and that's all you had. So way back when I was a kid, I think I carved my first decoy when I was 11. If you guys see me now, I don't have much hair anymore. Back then, I sure did. Old pics there. So, I came from a hunting family. No one went to college. They used to hunt, but it was over before I showed up, and then got into it basically due to friends and saw everything on TV. Marty Stauffer and Mutual Omaha's Wild Kingdom kind of got me interested in wildlife, but I always liked art. Like I was actually the goofy kid that would ride a different bus home than everybody else so I could walk home a different way with my camera and, zig and zag through all these prairie potholes and look for something new, and was always good at drawing. And I figured, hey, given I didn't like the commercial decoys, I should give it a try. So these are some pictures of me with my aviary I had as a kid. Luckily, I actually went to school with a bunch of aviary folks. So this is my attempt to replicate that and get to look at birds a lot. And overall, it's been very rewarding. I got into hunting, went to college forever, interested in science. I've had great jobs, interested in art. The top right picture, I was actually asked to be a federal duck stamp judge, which was pretty cool. Um, Made lots of friends, been to some cool places. That's been hunting with all those canvasback decoys. Um, I think 2 years, 3 years ago now, up at the famous Delta Marsh. And we'll get more into the stuff on the right, but I actually got to bring my own decoys to Iceland and help catch brant, which I consider that's the most exciting waterfowl species to me. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about traveling and all that. I got a map here on the right that I show just to see how much fun it's been chasing waterfowl for science, for art, all kinds of stuff. So lots of dots all over the place, but a lot of those purple ones we travel looking on the left. All those totes and backpacks are decoys. So yeah, always trying to make a hunt more than just shooting a bird. We got to have a story with it. So I'll show a lot of pictures about, we got a specific trip we're going to go do and make a decoy for it and, shoot that species next to it. Okay, I'll try to go through this real quick. So just for some background of what it takes to get trained as a student, finished high school way back in 91 and then started an associate degree up in Northeast Minnesota and got a bunch of early technician jobs. I was trapping salamanders, doing radio telemetry down there and right there in La Crosse, pool 8, pool 9 kind of stuff. And then moved up to Bemidji, Minnesota to start my undergrad. Got my first publication up on the top right there. First time I got a paper out. Yeah, got to learn how to do a lot of field work, all kinds of different stuff. Still hunted, was still really getting into carving. Never really set down either of those two. And then I was kind of in limbo trying to get into graduate school. Did a bunch of different projects from Alaska down to Louisiana. I got a couple more publications out, so got my resume beefed up and finally got into a master's project up in Fairbanks, Alaska, and working on black brant, a bunch of different components of their breeding biology. Actually carved a lot of decoys and field camps up there, and then ended up getting into a PhD program that continued work on breeding brant. So in these pictures here, you can see there's Ben again. And yeah, his dad with two black brant decoys. Down below, there's a spectacled eider decoy getting looked at by a pair of speck eiders. That was pretty cool. Those birds have been closed for harvest for probably mid 90s now, I guess it's been. So quite a while. So, it's as close as you can get to actually going hunting for one. But see one, have it check out your decoys thinking it's real, it's quite rewarding. And then started working on some other projects as well before I got a permanent job. So I had a bunch of different contract positions and kept dealing with science and got to go do a lot of stuff. Some of the trips you'll see with the decoys for work occurred during this time period. And then actually got my first job finally. Figured it was time to grow up and get a paycheck and kept cranking out projects. Got to start working on golden eagles, continued to get a lot of people out studying and doing biology. Picture on the lower left, bunch of folks in Nevada helping me catch canvasbacks for a really cool project that yeah, Ben and I have actually extended it now to where we're catching canvasbacks at this moment all the way across North America for about a 3-month period. So pretty cool stuff. Picture on the lower right's getting undergrad students out hunting. Yeah, a lot of things centered around waterfowl. And I currently working for Delta Waterfowl. Came here in 2019, moved from Reno to Bismarck, and here I am. So just the background here, where I came from. got to see lots of birds all over, and lots of reference to carved decoys. So now I'll get into the decoys a little bit for you guys. So I'm a little different with this. I got spoiled living out west. Living in Reno in the Sierras, we have, you got redwood trees, which is, they're the largest trees. Then you got sequoias behind them. And in the lower left there, you can see my daughter standing next to a sugar pine, which is the third biggest North American tree. And we never cut down a living one, but we can actually get firewood and different wood permits from the Forest Service to go in and cut up dead and down trees. So here we are with our Alaska mills and planking out these boards. We'd paint the ends as well. You want to take care of that wood really good in that dry climate out west. And boy, I'd drive that stuff an hour home and it was already cracking and checking on the ends if you didn't paint it. So you had to do that to really slow down the exodus of moisture from the wood. And I'd let them sit here like in the bottom middle on stickers for about a year, and I could get the moisture content down to an ideal thing to start carving decoys with them. Okay, so the first thing I do with the decoy is pick out good wood, use photographs up in the top right there to develop patterns. So these are all side ones. I should have showed another picture. I got top ones. I'm able to go to aviaries like what I was showing before. And, you're feeding the birds and it's like, okay, make them go that way. And you can get every pose under the sun that you want. And if they aren't in captivity and you deal with getting your own wild photographs, but then you can compromise and, use an angle from a different similar species. Because sometimes, like a wild bird, you can never get a photograph from straight up. And then once I get that pattern developed, I'll go ahead and select this wood, get a side profile, like that bottom left picture. There's a side profile and a top one. And I'll draw those in and then use a bandsaw to cut those out and end up with something similar to that bottom right duck. So now I'm done with all the saw work and it's time to start carving. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll use a whole combination. Pat will probably get way more into all the specific methods, but I'll use power tools, hand tools, all kinds of different stuff to get this bird about 95% carved. I don't want to get it perfect because the next step, I got to take it apart and beat it up on a drill press. And I don't want to, I still want room to make fixes if I bang it up too bad. Okay, so the next one here, I'll actually use a Forstner bit on my drill press, open these decoys up. Typically, I make decoys out of 2 boards and screw them together, get them to this stage. And when they're ready to get here, I'll take them apart and start hollowing these out. And this hollowing is really nice. It serves 3 purposes, actually. One that I just remembered is you can actually put ashes inside this now in case it was an urn for someone and their hunting dog. 2, it lightens the weight of the decoy. So if you got to carry them around, whatever, that would be good. Then it also helps with buoyancy. You're taking a lot of that top weight and removing it. And then later you'll replace it with keels. Keels will typically have lead in them. And then the last thing it benefits is it actually takes a lot of that structural integrity of the wood out. And so what I'm doing is breaking the potential for this decoy to split because now the wood's not there. You look on the lower left there, you can see, say that edge up by the breast is now not connected to the edge down by the tail. And that just stabilizes the wood. A crack cannot go all the way through the decoy, except for the top and the bottom. But right through the middle, you just took out, 80% of the way for a crack to form and ruin a decoy. Okay, then when I get done with that, I got to put them back together. And, some of my decoys, I think Pat's the same way too. So maybe he'll show you both. But, you can use wood or you can use cork. Some folks use foam, all kinds of stuff like that, but you still got to assemble it and put it together. Some folks use epoxy. I simply like to use Gorilla Glue. It tends to fill the voids a lot more, little imperfections with the cork, or let's say I didn't run the boards through the planer perfectly, but I still wanted those boards to line up nice. It fills those voids for me. And then I want to start sealing these things. Just about all the wood, even the awesome redwoods of Northern California, you still want to seal them just to make them last longer. So I use a spar varnish, get that on there first. You can see these with a golden eye in the bottom left and an American widgeon on the right. They have the spar on there, and then these Roskies on top. I hit them with a shot of primer spray paint, and that lets me start looking for any imperfections. When you got all that grain visible, you can't see those imperfections. But when you make it all just a monotone, I don't know if you can see on that right Roscoe's, I can see where I glued the neck down to the body. There's some little gaps in there. So I can get in there, sand that, fill that up, and really get this carving as perfect as I can get it before I start covering it up. Okay, so one technique I do, and I don't think Pat does this. Everyone does things a little bit different, but I don't use an airbrush anymore. I used to, but a lot of folks taught me how you can use a lightly loaded brush to drag very dry paint where you want. But when you do that, you got to have something to attract that paint and lift it off your brush. So that's where I put texture on. So this is just a texture medium that I usually sponge on. Both these examples, on the heads, you can see the bills are smooth, but I sponge that on before I start painting. And then just imagine when I'm painting later and I want to shade, I can just hit those ridges on that texture. And you can really get a nice blend, especially if you go slow and just keep adding layers to it. So it's another neat way to be able to get detail into a decoy. Plus, lets you one, it's tough, so it helps durability to the decoy. But when you're out hunting and stuff, you actually have something that's not super slick to grab on those icy days. Okay, then you start with just a nice base coat. And you can actually get this into your texture as well. Just something to start setting the stage for where the different parts of the birds are going to be, their breasts, their speculum, their wingtips, their tail, all that. You're starting to just set this up and slowly start building colors. When you start out, you tend to slop paint on really quick and try to get to that final stage really quick. But as you develop as a carver, you realize slow and building colors is way nicer. It gives you a more softer product that looks more similar to a real bird. Okay. Then you start building that up. So you can see that top right black scoter there. I used to do that all with stencils and an airbrush and build that up. But now with that texture medium, what you can see with that emperor goose is a little bit of airbrush, but that's mostly a dry brush work. And this ringneck on the lower right, an airbrush has never even looked at that duck before. So, just as I matured through carving or switched up techniques, you're kind of looking for a similar final product, but you find different ways to get there. And to me, I really like the texture and dry brushing at this stage. And then you get into the details. This is the very time consuming part, and everyone's different. I mean, there's some guys that you'd swear it looks just as good as taxidermy. Those feathers look just perfect. And I'm slowly getting there, but at the same time, I want to back off a little bit and keep it more of an artsy form. So, you're always developing. I'd love to develop like two different styles, something more accurate versus something more artsy would be kind of fun. So you can see that hen spectacled eider. I'm just trying to, what would be the word? I guess lighten the spectacle around her eyes so it doesn't match her cheeks there. So doing all that with really fine brushwork. Those are the spec eiders. I actually made two of them that time, and just looking at their back there, that decoy is relatively smooth. Those primaries are carved to be elevated, and there's actually a groove carved down the middle of the back. And otherwise, that decoy is completely smooth. That's all shading and putting shadows in there to make some feathers look higher in elevation than the others, if that makes sense. And something I haven't pointed out before, that ring neck there on the bottom right, using that texture medium, I mentioned before I was sponging it on to get that kind of an orange peel look to it. on the side of that ring neck, you can actually use neat little combs to go through that stuff and turn it into this vermiculation. That's like the side pocket of a mallard, or side pocket of a ringneck there, and you give it a base color, and then you come in again, and exactly like the sponging, it lifts and gives you that texture. And now I came over with a darker color to just highlight those peaks of those ridges, and it makes it look like the little striped effect. Some people actually sit there and do it with brushes, but that's a lot of work. And when you make a lot of decoys, time's of the essence, right? Okay, and then we add the keels. It's kind of one of the last important parts, and this helps with keeping your bird upright. And I'd say the last 2 years, I got a little sloppy with that. And that bottom left picture is the result of the judges at the Puget, or I guess the Washington Brant Foundation carving event last year. Notice both my decoys did not tilt up, so I got the thumbs down from all of them. That was a brutal one to watch. So at decoy shows, there's a bunch of rules you have to meet, and it didn't meet it at this one. When you're hunting, you can get away with it a little bit more. Keep in mind these decoys are attached to something. They're either attached to a string with a chunk of lead that keeps pulling on them, and it'll help reset them, especially with wave action, or if you run long lines like I do, that really pulls them down. And so judges are usually your worst critic, and it's not as big of a deal for actual hunting decoys. And again, here at these contests, they do all kinds of stuff. Like you can see here, there's a little tank floating in water because they want to judge them. A lot of these categories are for hunting decoys, so they actually want them to be in water. Not how good does it look on a shelf while everyone's eating Thanksgiving dinner, right? So yeah, so this is a this common thing at decoy competitions where there's a water tank and the judges are there. Your bird doesn't float right, or God forbid your paint starts sliding off because you just finished that decoy midnight the night before, right? So it's a lot of fun to go to these shows. Okay, and then go into a few of these, just show, this is the part I really like, is, using them for hunting as well. I'll just go through a collection here of some of my funner decoys that we've had fun with over the years. So that left print there, same one that was on the title slide, that little arch up there is very highlighted with this artistic rendition, where they found all these decoys, and canvasbacks coming in, and on the picture on the right is right about at the same spot, and it's not perfect, but it's out there in Nevada, and those are my own decoys. It's a really neat wetland. It's one that's only wet maybe 2 out of 10 years, so you can't just go there any year. You got to pick the right year, and being able to shoot canvasbacks with your own decoys right where all this stuff is known for historically. I think these decoys are 2,000 years old when they were found by bat guano miners, and they one gets to sit in Carson City, the capital of Nevada, and the rest are all in the Smithsonian. And it's actually pretty cool. When all the states were selecting a new back for their quarters, Nevada, their number 2 pick was the Lovelock Cave decoys. But they, especially wildlife people, you'll love to learn that they lost to the feral horse, which was a bummer. But these are a big thing out in Nevada. You'll see them renditions all over the place. So here's some fun pictures here. Those canvasback decoys I mentioned are, near and dear to my heart. I've had them forever, well over half my lifetime. And I breed my own dogs too, so it's fun having the mothers and daughters. So I won't go into which picture's which, but when you move from one picture to the next, the young dog becomes the old dog. And you can see all those pictures on the left are got my hand carved decoys in there. And a new dog and an old dog. And you'll see a lot of pictures too. I've got 2 daughters that are pretty active with hunting, and they've even carved some decoys and entered them in shows, all that fun stuff. And there's some more here, some neat trips where, like I said, it makes things a lot neater. Top left here is a trip. I've hung out. All my graduate work was in the Beringia region of the North Pacific there, and yeah, I found a new spot to go shoot some Pacific eiders. So I made all my own decoys. There's some pretty big guide outfits up there that good friends of mine, other folks around, and you're always out in a Zodiac boat miles from shore. Some people are getting nauseous, and it's a pretty risky hunt. But you can see up in the middle there's my white bucket where I sat on a sandy beach with a whole bunch of my decoys and got some birds. In the top middle, some king eiders I made 15 years ago to go shoot kings. Top right is actually an urn from one of my dogs that was named after the common eider, and I got it all carved and painted as the Pacific subspecies. Bottom left is a bunch of common golden eyes with a lot of really old decoys. You can see the back ones. Those are some of my first decoys. I was probably 15 years old with probably my newest golden eye, which now is probably 20 years old in front. And I had a fun late North Dakota hunt there shooting golden eyes. That middle picture, emperor geese were closed for 32 years. And I'll talk about this one a little bit more, but yeah, we made a bunch of decoys, went and filled our tags. It's a Taverner's goose in the bottom up at Eisenbeck Refuge on the Alaska Peninsula. On the right is a good collection of my Brant floaters. This is out in Tomales Bay and just north of San Francisco on the California coast. And there's some other ones here. Another one with my daughter. I gave her that hen for 16th birthday, and she went out and shot some king eiders with my decoys. Some more Brant harlequins up at Cold Bay, Alaska. Cinnamon teal. This is actually last year. A really old cinnamon decoy I made in downtown LA. We're able to hunt some old hunting clubs that are on stormwater retention ponds. And I already mentioned, I forgot I put that picture in earlier of the spectacled eiders on the field site where I did all my graduate work. And then you start getting into just the fun parts of decoys, I think. Definitely built up that they work, have fun, have some adventures with them. But then you get to go see other people's renditions of what a bird looks like. And look at this bottom left. This is from one of my good outfitter friends in Puget Sound. All these decoys he made. And it's just crazy. And that Barrow's goldeneye decoy there, I bet you that thing's 22 inches long. So people exaggerate them. Some people think they need to be bigger so you can see them from farther away and the birds are attracted, or you keep them life size so that you can have more of them. So you're dealing with an abundance attractant. All these things you think about how you can get more birds to come to you for whatever reason. The top right, this is the president of the Washington Brant Foundation. He has over 200 of these, and it's basically a 2x4 with some thin Luan for a silhouette head, and it's a big chunk of white foam that he found, somewhere in the rack line on the coast, and it's attached with baling wire to the 2x4. He takes pride saying that his decoy spread is the only one that you need a tetanus shot to deploy. And then in the bottom right, this is actually really fun. I went down to Baja, Mexico, San Quintin, and the bottom two decoys are my newest ones. They're actually urns as well of a dog. And those other two decoys, I stumbled upon them. I left them there in 2005. And the carvings are still fine, but they definitely repainted these. But it was pretty fun to find some decoys. I've been sitting down in Mexico for, is that 19 years? Yeah, that was pretty cool. And I shot birds over them. So fun stuff that just makes it a little more exciting. And then other times, my kids have been involved all the time, and simple decoys can be used. These are just simple silhouettes. You can use thin plywood. I like Luan, but it's not as permanent. They tend to swell more. And you cut them out, put a tarp on the ground, and they'll paint them, make them look good. So you can see them in the lower left. They're deploying decoys up at Eisenbeck Lagoon. Top right, they're all deployed. Bottom, we went to a decoy show, and that bottom right one I'm pretty proud of. Every decoy in that picture was made by by my daughter. And what's even more fun, that's her first banded bird. So that was a good trip for her. And then you start getting into the really neat stories. And there's another one that's even better than this one, but I thought this one was pretty neat. So I figured I'd share with everybody. So this bottom left picture is me back in 2007 banding Brant. And I did a whole bunch of them, including, I don't know how good the screens are, but it included a whole bunch of black bands that started with the letter U. And then imagine, putting these in an Excel spreadsheet and hitting sort. That's how we deploy them in order so that they make sense in our database. And you can see this top picture is U1H and the other one is UAE. And we don't use all letters and all numbers, but basically those two bands are about 80 bands apart when we deploy them. So I banded all these birds in 2007. That middle picture is my dog that was named Bernie for Branta bernicla, the Latin name for a brant. So that's the picture that we have hanging in the spare bedroom part. And so that's pretty cool. So released them in 2007, shot it in 2014, retrieved, got a beautiful picture of my dog retrieving it. She died in 15. Then I finally got around to making 2 decoy urns for her, put her ashes in them, got to go shoot Brant down in Mexico about a year ago. And I shot this bird and I look at it, it's like, well, I'll be dang, that's an old band. And I still can remember all that data from my graduate work. It's like, I did that one. And it's like, you know what? I bet you that's pretty close to this. So here, released in 7, shot in 14, shot another one in 24. So that was a 17-year-old band, 80 numbers apart. So it's pretty neat, bringing all this biology and the decoys. Yeah, just a fun story. But like I said, I got a better one than that. But Ben knows that one. He can share it with folks later if people would be interested. Okay, then I mentioned the emperor goose story. So that was really cool. Emperor geese were closed for 32 years, and then they reopened in 17 for Alaska residents, and then they opened it in 18 on a draw for 25 tags for non-residents. And somehow my daughter and I both drew that first year. So we started carving, let's see, the hunt was Thanksgiving. I bet you we started carving decoys about April because it was going to take a while. So you can see that top middle picture. We made like 30 silhouettes all on top. Those are all thin, ready to get put on stakes. We made a whole bunch of floaters down on the bottom there. You can see my daughter did that middle one. That's her initials is the GVN. And then, yeah, sure enough, we went up to Alaska. That picture I had way at the beginning of all our decoys was this trip. So it took like, 3 totes and 4 backpacks to get all these up there. And we got some gorgeous birds only using our hand carved decoys, and brought them home for taxidermy. Okay, we'll start getting into some biology uses as well. So my daughter and I started experimenting with prairie chickens and sharp-tailed grouse. This top right picture, making just cheap silhouettes. I mean, I bet you I whipped out those 4 in an hour, cut them out, painted them fast. And the next day we drove down to the Sandhills in Nebraska, and we actually got some greater prairie chickens to come into them. And down the lower right, we've made a lot more now, and we really enjoy this. And word's gotten out with all my friends. And then sure enough, this decoy on the left, some biologist friends from Winnipeg gave this to me. And this is, you instantly look at it, and if you're a decoy guy, this is an old Tory Ward decoy. But it's like, why would he make a sharp-tailed grouse? I've never seen one painted before by, from him. And so it's like, that's pretty cool. So someone heard that I made one, and the word got out from a really nice gal in Alberta that's studying sharptails. And she needed decoys with a speaker to attract them in the spring. And she was going to rocket net them to capture them for, translocation, starting to develop some new populations elsewhere. So she's like, hey, can you make me some of these? And she's going to paint them herself. And so that was really fun. I need to make some of these because these look way better than those flat decoys we use, even though they're very effective. And like I said, she went ahead and painted them herself. So this is pretty fun to see, you know, you're carving and then someone else gets to slap some paint on there to, you know, make it look like what they think a grouse looks like. So here's a, you know, taxidermy bird on the left was her reference. And, you know, she's got a whole bunch of birds in the lower right there. They're kind of dull. And you can see up on the left, she's got all the strutting males with their air sacs and eye combs all inflated and they're white and their tails sticking out. And yeah, she had great success. And then I had another friend in graduate school studying long-billed curlews in eastern Nevada, but he was studying nesting ones. And he's like, man, there's so many birds that come through here. I wonder if we could catch them. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take that bet. So I made about 24 of these horrible silhouettes. This is my first time ever making silhouettes. So we made a whole bunch of those, grabbed my snow goose e-collar, which is you know, a way to use electronic recorded calls to bring in snow geese to help make hunting more successful. And we did that with these curlews. And you can see this picture of me holding a banded curlew. You look hard, you can see all the bands after we got done processing them, but you can see the rocket net deployed there. I think we caught 54 curlews in a single rocket net shot. It was phenomenal. I've never heard of anyone else doing stuff like that. And then I start getting other calls from people like, hey, I hear you're experimenting with, you know, these different decoys, you know, can you paint us up some? So here I got a call from a bunch of biologists from Europe working with Irish Brent, birds that breed in the northeast part of North America, Ellesmere, Axel Heiberg, islands like that. And they go over the Greenland ice shelf, get to Iceland and stage, and then the whole population winters in Dublin. And they got a beautiful marked bird project there. And they asked me if I could get them some new decoys. They had some old ones that were really, really old. And so instead of carving them, I found these really neat little cackling goose decoys. And you can see them all on the left is how they were when I bought them in that left picture. And then on the right is as I fixed them and turned them into Atlantic brand. And then down on the bottom is the whole order I sent to them. And yeah, shipping was really expensive. My wife wasn't happy when she heard I was doing this because she's always wanted to go, and Iceland's never been on my radar. But lo and behold, it was cheaper to pay excess baggage and go there and deliver them rather than mailing them. So twist my arm, I had to go, and it was a lot of fun. So great success catching these birds. Met lots of people, ate lots of foods I've never heard of. But what was really cool to me is there's 3 subspecies of brant. My graduate work was on the black brant, but then this left picture of me, the left bird is an Atlantic brant, really dark contrast between the breast and the neck, the black neck sock. And then the one in my other hand with my ring finger is a Russian brant. And so it's pretty cool. After this trip, I could say I banded all 3 subspecies of the world's brant. And yeah, I think we caught like 300 brant for them, lots of radios, lots of bands, lots of neat data collected. And I got an open invite to go back and visit my decoys someday. I'll have to take the wife, I guess. Then those guys really liked me, and they also work on barnacled geese. And they're like, hey, can you make us up some of those? So here's some pictures. You know, on the left is me getting ready to ship them out. There they are up on the top once they're done getting painted, and top right they're getting deployed in the field, and down there on the lower right is somewhere you look in there. I think all the decoys are further back, but there's a whole bunch of barnacles that got lured in front of the net and they shot the net. And I went ahead and grabbed some video for you guys to just see how this works, and let's see if I can make this work. So you can see that, you can see the things that aren't moving are my decoys. Now I got to remember to speed this up for you guys. I don't have to watch the whole thing, but to put radios and geolocators on birds. And here they are getting ready to catch birds. So they're folding up the net. There's my decoy with more of them. There they all are. They set them out. There's speakers there to call the birds, make it look more realistic. They get everything all set up. Here they come. You know, they think those are their buddies. and all of a sudden they catch a whole bunch of birds to band, put radios on, testing for bird flu, etc. Well, you're out to turn it off. I think I did it good. Yep. Oh, okay. Then here's one that we had a lot of fun. So I was going to go up to Baffin Island in eastern Nunavut, and yeah, they wanted me. This is where blue geese were discovered. Some guy, biologist Dewey Soper, worked for a Canadian Wildlife Service, spent 3 years looking for the first blue goose nest ever described. And we actually got to see the cairn that he left. I think we're only the second people to visit that. And so yeah, we named him Dewey the decoy, and put him in with his his real congeners there, and there he is on the right floating in the Blue Goose River. We thought that was a pretty fun trip. And then I get to deal with a bunch of decoys for awards, retiring biologists, folks like that. And I think I'm up to about 250 of these over the years. So it's pretty fun to be part of retirement awards. And then lastly, just showing, some urns here. These are my personal urns for 3 dogs, but you can see lower left there, they all are complete. Take them out hunting. And on the right, you can see all the little box I make inside with ashes in there before we glue them up. I think I know that's all I got for you guys, a little bit under time. And any questions? There's a picture from let's see, it was this weekend. We're in Northern California, and these are all handmade decoys with, as I said, the best bird out there. So that's all I got.
Oh, here, I'm turning my camera back on. I'm trying to.
What should I do? Should I stop sharing, or should I just leave it like this?
You could leave it like that. So so we have to leave the room in a few minutes, but did we have any questions in the room here? Okay, I see a lot of head shaking. So it looks like we have one thing in the chat, and that's just Sophie. So if there's anybody online, if you have any questions, feel free to type them out. I do have a question. So, I've noticed that yourself and a lot of decoy carvers will really put a lot of detail into the carvings, and then use them for hunting or in your case for scientific research. So do the ducks actually care? Like, do we find that the birds come in better to realistically painted ones versus ones that are just kind of block painted?
No, I think with hunting, you only need them to get within 20 yards max. Most people are shooting before even that close. So if they can tell something's off, they should already be getting shot at by those rules. Then for rocket netting and doing this stuff, I think it really matters, because they're going to come into them, and now they're standing there before you shoot the net going, hey, this guy looks fake, what's up? And that's where, sometimes you got bait to attract them. You can't use bait for hunting, but you can for rocket netting and stuff like that. So there's something to help make them stay there while you're waiting for them to get right in front of the net. Or like I mentioned, we'll use recorded calls to help hold them. That video I showed of the Brant in New Jersey there, you could actually see them back off, and then all of a sudden they came right back in right when they shot the net, because they were like, hey, we hear those calls. These actually do look real. So yeah, I think for hunting decoys, you can be a little sloppy, but when you start trying to catch birds, those birds are standing right next to your decoy for a little bit longer. So you got to have them a little more realistic. Some people actually use taxidermy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you get into the sandhill crane biologists, and yeah, they're putting taxidermy in the field.
Oh, interesting.
There's some
So
hunters that do that, especially I'm heading to Maryland tomorrow, and the east shore of Chesapeake Bay is quite famous for using stuffers, which are all taxidermy Canada geese, but very fragile.
interesting. Yeah, it seems like that would be a tough choice, a tough thing to be using in the field. Like it get ruined pretty quickly. But but that was it for my questions, unless Jason or anybody else had questions. So I'm going to thank everybody for joining us, and I'm going to thank Chris again for joining us. And I'm actually going to and just remind everybody that we have Pat Gregory coming again, or coming next week, to talk about more decoys. Probably going to talk a little bit more about the history and the art form itself. But feel free to join us for that. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and say goodbye. So thank you very much.
Thank you.